Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Luke Jean, and I have here with me someone who I may know very well, but perhaps you do not. He makes videos on his channel, Lessons from the Ocean, both on practical manhood and even practical tips on fixing things such as boats and cars. Welcome to the channel, Jerry. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Um, yeah, I just uh, post videos on practical things that I think would help, on a physical basis, whether that's fixing things or on a more internal level. Uh, I don't really get so deep into theology, so that's where you're here to balance it out. I'm actually a fan of your channel, so I like going back and watching videos. Like, I don't know if I had a question here and there. I'm like, what did Luke say about that? So, yeah, no, it's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. If you guys are new to the channel, please definitely subscribe to both my channel and Jerry's channel if you're interested in more videos like these, because we've also had Benji Uyama on from High Noon, and we talked a lot about masculinity. And I think it's a good idea to continue that conversation, particularly from the unificationist perspective. And that's what we're here to do today. Unless we're not. Are we here to do that today, Jerry?
Oh, we're doing that. We're doing that for more than probably an hour.
So if you're a woman listening, don't feel like, oh, this video is not for me. It will maybe give you some insights onto what men are doing, how men should be, and maybe what you should look for if you're looking for a man yourself. So let's just dive in. The first topic we wanted to discuss was how unificationism, the teachings of Reverend and Mrs. Moon, Sun Myung Moon, Hak Jahan Moon, help inform what it means to be a true man. Because I think nowadays, especially with the whole red pill movement, it's there's a lot of ideas circulating about what being a true man means. Does it mean just having a lot of money? Does it mean just having a bunch of women around you? Does it mean something more? Does money matter? What extent does it matter? Where does character come in? Where does faith come in? So what do you think about that? Because I think a lot of men are wondering that question, especially when you go on Instagram and you have the algorithm, and if you're a man who's trying to develop himself, there's many paths available, it seems, when you see 30-second clips.
Right, right. Yeah. I think one thing I really appreciate about our teaching is the uh, the first dream that we should all have is to become a true character. Now, whether you're a woman or a man, that's who you have to become. That's the first dream is to become a true man or a true woman. And in what sense, what does it mean to be true? And people will watch videos on that. They'll watch like 10 videos just on that, and all those 10 videos have different meanings. And so I think it can get really tricky for some guys to say, um, does money buy happiness? Money doesn't buy happiness, or women can't really fulfill me, or women can't fulfill me. I'm going to get as many women as I can. So, what does divine principle mean, or what does our teachings mean about um, becoming a true man? So we watch these self-help videos, and self-help is good until it becomes about yourself. The problem is with self-help is the problem ends with ourselves. And when we reach a block in our lives and we're just kind of focusing on, okay, well, I've got the six pack, I've got the money, I've got this, I've got what, David Goggins or, all these other self-help talkers told me, and I'm still not happy. What is it? What am I missing? Um, and the answer I came up with is identity. A lot of guys are out there just thinking, why am I here? Who am I? What am I? Am I a child of God or am I not a child of God? Does God exist? Am I here to just rot, or am I here to actually be something more? And something that really helped me personally in the unification faith is that I was able to find my identity. And that is, in my opinion, the most important thing a man can hold, um, to understand that he is a man and he has to fulfill the roles of a man, um, whether that's in the family, whether that's in your future family, whether that's you preparing to have a future family. Um, One thing is when you know who you are, the path becomes very clear. You're not dizzy. You're not the path is not foggy. And so that's what I would say, um, identity. Yeah.
Identity. Identity. That is something that I think the more external understanding of what manhood is lacks. Because the question is always, what is your identity tied up with? If your identity is just tied up with your physical features, your six pack, like the example you gave, or it's about your money, then that's what you pursue as the most primary thing. Yeah, identity. How did the unification movement, how did its teaching specifically, do you feel informed your identity in a positive way? Because people who follow the path of, the Andrew Tates of the world, the path of those just looking for women or money or purely physical features, they have identity too.
Right. Yeah. Um, I'm only 25, but I like to say I lived two lives. My first life was my first life also had an identity, and that identity was more towards money, career, and in high school I actually was interested in looking for women. I just couldn't find any because, well, let's just say there was a low, what did I say, a low pole there. And then, I go to an event from our church here and there, which I wasn't a big fan of at the time. I was a little bit careful. I was a little bit cautious because I didn't understand, the intention. But I found that this identity, the Unification Church identity that I'm proudly a part of, helped me become the man I am today. And that is a man with a beautiful wife, um, a man who understands that I have a role to fulfill, um, someone who I can say for without a doubt I know my path. And it used to be foggy, but now it's not. And that's not to say it's not going to be foggy in the future, but at least I have help from those I identify with, like you and many other brothers and sisters. Um, and so I think the right identity is the one that doesn't corrupt the heart. It's the one that doesn't corrupt your being, it doesn't corrupt your body, and it doesn't corrupt your soul. Um, and that, to be honest, that's actually pretty easy to spot. Um, a lot of people, a lot of men are confused and they go for the quick love or the quick satisfaction, and it ends up becoming a trap. And maybe they don't see it at the time, but soon they'll see it. And you can hear a lot of stories on that. There's many stories on that. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's the idea of, are you going to put your heart first or your spirit first or not? Because everyone has a spirit, everyone has a heart. I think that's pretty undeniable just based on the human experience. Like, forget the fact that science has no, evidence for it. That's not even a valid question because the human experience says it exists and you have to pay attention to that. You said What you said reminded me of how having a mature character exists for the sake of something else. It's not just about yourself. I don't think we're meant to exist focused just on ourselves. I actually don't think the universe is even created that way. And this is unificationist, but it's in other religions too, like Buddhism, for example, the idea of the Tao, how atoms exist for molecules and molecules make other bigger things, and you have eventually plants, and plants sustain animals, and eventually human beings are sustained by animals and plants. But if human beings are the only people at the top, if we're the top of the hierarchy, I mean, this is the world that results. We have to exist for something else. Now, either something literally eats us, or we are in relationship with something higher than us, which has to be God. If there's no God, then there's no owner of the world. And if there's no owner of the world, then everyone else thinks they're the owner. And that doesn't work. That's where fighting happens. So we're not meant to exist for the sake of ourselves. We're like the only type of being that doesn't innately do that. Like, isn't that interesting? Animals innately do that. Plants innately do that. The smallest molecules of the universe, atoms, do that. Solar systems are inside clusters, which are inside galaxies, and galaxies have their own clusters. Everything, it's just us. So, unless we have something that's bringing us to serve something higher, which of course is the family, then character development will have a lapse in producing joy, I feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's right. That's 100% correct. And um, family is that basis, actually, what you just said. I mean, when even if we look at it from a historical perspective, who are the people who've stuck together the most? You know, it's those who've put God first. And if it wasn't God, they put family first, right? And that is what our society is made out of. And you know, you have these groups like the Mormons, the Amish people, the Jewish people. These guys are the ones who've really stuck with their community, and they're the ones who really put family first. I just came from Korea, and although, you know, some can say, "Oh yeah, well it's Christian, but it's also Buddhism, and there's very little talk of God there." They're very, they put family on the highest pedestal of truth there. You know, when someone dies in that faith, they go to the grave and I think it's, I forget the amount of time, but they visit that grave at least once a month to pay their respects, because they understand there's a barometer of morality that they have to follow in order to, uh, you know, sustain that culture. And it's a culture that they're familiar with. It's a culture that they're comfortable with, and it's a culture that's never failed them. That's why it's very important to them.
Yeah.
Unification, unification culture has not failed me. Um, Now, I know some people have different stories in the faith, but there's stories like that everywhere, you know. Um, how many stories do you hear of people running away from Christianity, Islam, you know, things like this because um, there was one person in there that didn't fit their theology or didn't fit their morality. And so, you know, there's flaws here and there in every culture, but it's just the fact that everyone's doing their best to maintain family, to maintain that sense of family. And although, you know, you and me are not blood related, we call each other brothers. And that ties me really closely with you. And that's something that we share around the world in our faith. And so, yeah,
Yes.
family is definitely the center of our faith, and I think in other faiths as well.
Yeah, it's identity grounded in what? It's grounded in family. I think that's the key because, and many modern thinkers are talking about this now, you need a role in order to be truly fulfilled. And is there happiness when you're just with yourself? I mean, maybe for a bit, but forever? I don't think so. I think you have to exist within relationships of others because that's the only thing that's higher. And that really is the family. Yeah, the cultures that value family the most and community the most are the ones that survive the most. I think that's a big insight you talked about. And I think men are kind of, and it's hard to just say like, oh man this, man that. So I'll just speak for myself. I really needed community to grow. Not saying like necessarily like a specific religious community either. I'm just saying community. I needed community to grow. If I didn't have community, I would not have grown. And in fact, I did not grow until I had a community of like minded brothers who were trying to grow in a particular way, in a particular focus. It's called Rising Kings. My friend Samuel founded it. And without that group, I would not have grown. So forget about religion for a second. If you want to grow as anyone, but we're talking about men, my experience tells me you need a community of like minded men. You can't have a community where some people have this standard they're trying to achieve and others have this standard that they're trying to achieve. And it's difficult to, they're different. That doesn't produce growth, I feel. You have to have the same standard, period. That's why religions are so strict. That's why Judaism lasted so long, because there were enough people. Now, the Old Testament, clearly a lot of people said, screw this, I don't want to do this specific tradition. I'm going to
Right.
go worship Baal or whatever. But enough stuck with it that it lasted. And the same thing with Christianity. The Christian ethos of Christ, enough people held on to it and kept that as the standard for enough time that it was able to spread and grow. And their characters grew as a result too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, Men definitely need each other, and it's not just two or three. I think, in my opinion, the biggest pandemic in the world today is a lack of community, or just let's go even smaller than that, a lack of friendship. It's very hard to find friends nowadays. I'm seeing these videos. These guys are in China and they're working, and the expectation in China is that by 30 you have a career, you have a wife, and you have a two-story house. There's no time for friends. There's no time for community. One of the biggest things that has helped me as well has been taking rest in my community.
Mm.
Um, I know that today we like to glorify hustle culture. We like to glorify moving. Don't stop. Keep making the money. Keep going up and up and up. But I think that can be a very slippery slope when you turn off your heart and you turn off your soul and you just turn on your body. I needed to really take rest in our community because I needed to reflect who am I and what am I? Um, and I think that's what people have been doing. Like you said in the Bible, uh, some left here, some left there, and some tried new things, some tried here and there, because they were looking for their identity and they were taking rest in different cultures here and there. Um, and so I think it's very important to be able to explore our manhood, but at the same time, uh, but yeah, explore our manhood and also understand that we are allowed to take rest. It, is it surprising to hear, and this is probably going to be surprising to some viewers, um, what God wanted from Adam is exactly what he wants from us. And that is to be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion. But we also need to take rest, and that's exactly what uh, a lot of people fail to do in the Old Testament, here and there, even today. People are going, and they still can't find happiness. We need to take rest in God, and we need to take rest in our community. And by taking rest with those fellow brothers, we can reflect on who we are, who we want to be, and what is the goal for all men.
Take rest with that community, because there is another form of rest and it's called scrolling on Instagram. And I've had this experience where I will rest at home for a bit, or I'm resting wherever, and I'm on Instagram, totally fine in of itself. And then I scroll and I see various narratives of what manhood is in my algorithm. I noticed it. There's the David Goggins narrative, which is to never rest. Now, he has his own reasons why, and that's his journey, but is that an integrated existence? I would say no. But then there's the other narratives. There's the Andrew Tate narrative. There's the Nick Fuentes narrative. There's the Jordan Peterson narrative. There's all sorts of narratives about what manhood is, and that's not community. That's just a narrative. And you're being fed what story the algorithm wants you to inhabit. Carl Jung, he talks about this very clearly. Everyone lives in a story. Now, the question is, what story do you want to live in? But the real question actually is, what relationships with others are you in to live out that story? In
Right.
order to live out a story, you have to be in relationship with others. And if you're in relationship with just the screen or the character or the image of someone and not actual people, then y it's an ungrounded way of growth, I would feel. Because if someone just listens to, for example, Jordan Peterson, he says a lot of good things. Where is he lacking? Perhaps maybe even more family. And that's why I like the Unificationism. But even in Unificationism, not necessarily the teachings, but the culture of unificationism. Is there the culture of get to the gym and do the thing you hate most? And maybe, maybe not. That's up for debate. But it's important to have that in your life. There's many things that go into character growth, and you can't just rely on some algorithm or some face as a character of what manhood is to motivate you to grow. For example, I was sent a David Goggins interview and I needed to hear his perspective. I needed that part of the story, that part of that type of relationship of his, of his journey and how I need to stop being sick and tired of being sick and tired. But if I didn't have a relationship with other people, it would have just been for naught. I had to have that relationship with other people in, my community, which was Rising Kings and still is to this day. If I did not have that, I would not have grown. So everyone needs to get out of whatever the various narratives that are just being fed and focus on the relationships that will inform what your story will be.
Exactly, exactly. And you'll find very quickly when you are in relationship with others that you're not them and they are not you. And when there's a bunch of people like that in one room, and but they all have the same values, it's not that they all have different values, but if all of them got to, I like to use the gold star Olympic example. You have four gold star Olympics, and then you say, okay, well, I'm going to go see how each one of them train. The first gold star Olympic really goes out. He goes crazy. He's on the punching bag. He's on the treadmill. The second gold star Olympic is reading a book. Well, that's interesting. He's reading a book. He's not training, but he's still a gold star Olympic. You have one who's just kind of jogging. He's not really going all out, but he's not just sitting around doing nothing. And so, the last gold star Olympic is doing something different, but they're all gold stars and they've all reached their goal. And that's something that we have to understand is we're not all the same. We can't just listen to Jordan Peterson and expect a gold star. We can't listen to David Goggins and expect a gold star. You have to go out there, you have to hit the curb, blow through the curb, hit the cornfield, do whatever it takes to learn, grow, mess up, get back up, and do it again. And rest in those mistakes and reflect in those mistakes with others. When you reflect by yourself, it's good, but a lot of times you can get in your own head as well, especially if you're not in a good relationship with yourself, which is something I can really relate to very much. When I was not in a good relationship with myself, I wasn't someone who I wanted to be with. Um, and you know, I always made goals to do this. Wake up, don't hit the snooze button, or and then I end up hitting the snooze button. So I can't even have faith in myself. If Luke, you told me to come to dinner with you at 6 o'clock, and I always came at 7, and then I ended up coming at 8, and I ended up coming at 5:30, and I'm just never on time. You're just gonna say, screw it. I'm not gonna eat dinner with Jerry. He's never here. That's the same relationship I had with myself. I did not have faith in myself. I couldn't trust myself to make a decision. I needed to find comfort and rest and reflection with other men who were pursuing to go out there as well and make a change in their life. It's a beautiful thing when we do it correctly. Manhood, it's very beautiful. We talk about toxic masculinity, and I don't really buy that. You can agree or disagree, but I don't buy toxic femininity, I think there's toxic humanity. I think there's just toxic humans, and we sin. Um, but we sin with the intention. Now, some of us are absolutely crazy, and there are crazy people out there. But most of us who sin, we don't want to sin. We sin, and then we feel bad about it. We're in agonizing pain, and we want to repent. Um, we need to be together because we're always growing, and so that we don't get stuck up in our own heads, and that we're always growing together.
Yeah, that's big. That's a similar conclusion I reached with Benji on a previous video, which is everyone has their own path to growth. And it's everyone has their gold star that they're striving for. For example, for me, I needed to run. That was my personal hell. That's what I had to do. I don't go on here and tell everyone you have to run. Everyone has something to do that will help them grow. Everyone is has everyone's spirit requires different growth and it's a different journey. And you do need that with other men with the same goal in mind. Each one of their gold stars was different in your analogy. It's a really powerful statement you said there. Everyone's gold star was a gold star, but it was a different type of gold star. You have to be with people who have the gold star. If you have people with gold stars and then just a twig, that doesn't work in my experience at all.
Right, right. You and me, we share the same values, right? But your hell was running, and you like to exercise, right? But running was something you didn't want to do
Hated it.
since it right,
Hated it.
right, exactly. Um, I can really relate to that because I love nature. And at the age of 16, I decided to go to our church program called Ocean Challenge. And I went on the ocean on a horrible day for the first time in my life and had my ass kicked. I threw up. I I was just miserable. And I hated the ocean. And I came back on land and I'm just like, man, that was disgusting. That was absolutely horrendous. I'm never doing that again. But then I'm like, well, this program is a month and a half long. This is terrible, you know? And so for 2 weeks, I'm a miserable brat. Every day is just hell. Um, and I was in my head, yes. And I was going through hell in my head, yes. But I had older brothers and sisters there, um, older uncles specifically, who were of the tough love and were the soft love types. And I got the best of those worlds. I had one who said, you're too weak. You need to go out again. You have to keep going out again. And I hated that guy. I hated him for a month. I mean, I couldn't stand him. Now I actually, oh, I hope you're not watching this, but I was going to name one of my children after you.
Oh,
But
wow.
anyway,
Well, if you're
I'm not going to reveal the
watching,
names.
breaking news.
Yeah, there you go. Um, he really did help me, finding my wife and things like that. Uh, and then, um, there was another guy there who was of soft heart, and I found comfort in him too when I was miserable and wanted to shed tears.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, you and me, we share the same values, but we're two different men. We're two different human beings. You're very extremely well studied. I'm not. I'm a studied man,
Don't be so
but
sure, Jerry.
you're you're extremely well studied. I've seen your videos. You can be sure if you want. I'll testify for you. But yeah, um, yeah, and so to understand that there's differences, but to share the same value, it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing when we can understand that and come together.
And that's unificationism right there. Unificationism, and it's in the teachings. So don't say that, oh, but you have a church. Okay. The teachings say we're not supposed to be a church. We're supposed to be unificationists, which means every different type of human being, that 12 gates of heaven, that's the 12 gate symbol, every type of human being has their own journey to heaven. And if we can unite around a central standard, a universal value, then everyone can come on the same journey but keep their differences. Keep their differences, yet it's unity and diversity. It's how R.C. Sproul, a famous Christian commentator and preacher, put it, the existence of God. He put the existence of God as a unity and diversity. And if we're all God's children, if we all come from the one creator, if the entire universe comes from the one creator, then everyone has a unity, central goal, a central relationship, which is with God, ideally, in an individual way. And that's how, in unificationism, the whole world grows together. It's not conversion. Mother Moon has said so clearly, religion has reached its final destination and needs to disembark. Now, if you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim watching this, you might call that blasphemy. But the reality is that, and I talked about this with my friend Samuel, the founder of Rising Kings, he said it to me like this: the reality is that the new light in America and the new light in the world will be the one or ones who embody universal principles the most, embodying it the most. That will be the new light. And that's a unificationist teaching, just put a different way, that doesn't involve some sort of institution or sectarian group. That's why when people say, oh, the Unification Church is a cult, And you mentioned Korea. What's going on there is crazy, I think, because it's like, have you read the teachings? Like, do you really understand what growth and self development and maturation of character actually means in unificationism? Like, I don't think you do because you didn't read it and you haven't listened to people like you and I discussing it. Because this is what manhood really looks like in unificationism, or at least we're attempting to express it to the best of our ability. Because we could be wrong. We could be wrong about what manhood is because we're not perfect men and we don't embody the standard to the highest level we can. We both have a lot of growth to do and we both sin.
And sin is something that we shouldn't shy away from. Um, many people sin for different reasons. Well, some sin to do it on purpose and to mock, and I've met people who do that. And for them to find manhood is, I'm not really well versed in that area of atheism, or I guess you could say secularism. But for those in the Christian faith, or for those in faith in general, I think sin is something that we acknowledge and we have to take more seriously. Um, I've been to uh, big church gatherings, Christian church gatherings, and sin was never discussed ever. And this was when I was around 15, I remember, 14 or 15. Actually, fun fact, I left Unification Faith when I was 12, um, because I found that my community wasn't treating me right. Now, it wasn't like the main community, it was the kids, you know. Um, our church is predominantly Asian, and I was the only white kid there. And so there was a little bit of bullying here and there. And by the way, it's just a very powerful testimony. I made amends with them and I'm good friends with them now. Um, but as I was exploring my faith around from age 13 to 16, sin was never talked about. It was always lukewarm. And when we don't acknowledge wrongdoing, I think we can easily mix up what the ideal is. I mean, we should really take seriously. This is something that a lot of people mess up in because they think it's okay to sin. They think they're going to be forgiven, which they will be, but will they grow?
Mm. Yeah,
There is a
that's interesting. That's an
Yeah,
interesting way of putting it.
right. Um, we only grow in God through our works of faith, not just through faith alone. There are so many instances in the Bible where uh, people had repented and their relationship with God had grown. That is in the Old Testament and that is in the New Testament. This is a universal thing that happens with humanity and spirituality. We can't just be automatically close to God simply because we believe in God. We need to understand there is a morality we have to follow. There is a rule and role that we must fulfill as children of God. And that's not to say that if you sin, you're a horrible person, but that is to say that to sincerely stop sinning is the pathway to a better relationship with God and with others. The biggest sin of all is lust. Every sin, actually, in my opinion, leads to lust. You have the sin of greed. That's going to lead to the sin of lust. You have the sin, if you like material things, that's going to lead to lust. Uh, you just name it, and it's going to lead to lust. And in our faith, we like to just say chapter two.
Hmm.
That is the
Chapter 2 of the Divine Principle, where it talks about the
chapter
fall of
two.
man.
Yes, that is the final station in the train. Chapter two. If you stay on that train. Um, And so that's something that we seriously have to talk about as men, because we do have desires that we want fulfilled, especially when we get older. Um, and it's not wrong to fulfill those desires, but how we fulfill them is just as important as, yeah, no, just how we fulfill them is very important. So,
Yes, yes, it is. And sin is forgiven, but do you grow from it? That's the right mindset. Jesus, of course, in the Gospels says repeatedly, your sins are forgiven. Go and sin no more. People like to leave that out. The goal is for you to sin no more, which implies that you have grown from your sin. You have to confront your sin in order to grow. That's huge. You have to confront your shame in order to grow. That's huge. If you don't, it's just a weight that weighs you down. It's very similar to the allegory of the cave that written by Plato, that Socrates is talking to Glaucon. He says, the weight on the prisoner that keeps the prisoner looking at the darkness or things of the physical world, knowledge of the physical world. That's what the darkness means, the cave means in that allegory. What keeps you there is pleasures. It is the shadows. It's the things that are shadows and shame because actually pleasures, and I know Socrates, this is where I would differ from Socrates. Socrates says that external pleasures just shouldn't be fulfilled in the sense that they're not as important. They're not as important as things of the soul. Don't even pay attention. It's not even as real as what is in the soul. I would differ by saying that you do need to fulfill those desires in the proper way, in the proper way, in the way that is within relationship with something or someone higher than yourself, which if you're smart, your wife you will consider to be higher than yourself in your relationship. Now, are you equal? Yes. But in terms of your relationship, it doesn't matter. You both need to think that the other is higher and more important for the marriage to work. Same thing with the relationship with God. He's not God if he's not higher than you, or God is not higher if God is not higher than you. See my does God have pronouns video for why I just modified my statement there. But it really is true. You have to confront it because otherwise it's this idea of integration of the shadow that Carl Jung talks about. Carl Jung, analytical psychologist, the reason why he pays attention to religion is partly because of how it talks about sin. And the way to finally resolve sin and confront it is by integrating your shadow, looking at it dead on in the face and resolving it. And that leads to growth in Jung's term, self transformation. But whatever term you want to use for it, that's what it is. It's growth.
Right. And yeah, exactly. We have the feminist movement today who is trying to become like men, but little do they know, um, there's a magic in womanhood. There is a beautiful magic in womanhood. Um, and that's not to be below men. And it's not to be above men either. It's to fulfill men. You really want to dominate, and I've seen a lot of feminists who just want to dominate men. The best way to dominate man is to be the best woman you can possibly be.
Oh, men will
And
fall on their face on the floor if you're the best woman you can be. Do you know how I know
oh yeah.
that? Because of my own wife.
Hmm.
Seriously. When she,
Right.
and she usually is, I mean, no one's their best self all the time. So I'm not just going to say my wife is always the best woman in the world. I'm sure she would even say, don't say that. Everyone,
Right.
make a mistake. But honestly, I feel like she is the best woman in the world. And I feel like floored by her. And the other
Yeah.
thing, too, and I'm sorry if I interrupted you, but the other thing, too, is men do this too with other men. Women are trying to be men. Why? Because they feel that's true freedom. That's the equality they're looking for. Well, what are men doing? Men are looking at the Andrew Tates from a filtered lens because the reality is, evidence shows that Andrew Tate clearly was in the pornography business and the cam business. And I don't care what you think about him. That was wrong. And that's how he made a lot of his money. But no, a lot of men just look at him from this filtered lens where he's saying all these problems that are problems, by the way. It's not like he says things that just aren't true. He says a lot of things that are true. That's not the point. The point is, are you trying to be like him or are you trying to be the best version of yourself with a gold
100%.
star that is different than the other guy's gold star?
Right. Yeah. 100%. And the one of the best ways you can be yourself or be the best man you can be is to have a wife. Um, I never really loved anyone until I found my wife. Now, mom, if you're watching, I love you. Uh, Andrew and Erica, if you're watching, I love you.
It's a different
But
type of love.
this love is through the roof, for sure.
It's a different
And
type of love, right, Jerry?
does she drive me crazy sometimes? Absolutely, 100%. Do I drive her crazy? No doubt about it. Sometimes I do it on purpose. Um, but the love isn't. all flashing lights. It's not just hot candles and turn the microwave on and let's get this going. This this love has been so how do I say, so unique to me that I'm so grateful for so many people who've helped me along the way. That's going back to the brothers that I've talked to help me find my wife, to help me, um, be the best man I can be for my wife. Uh, Ujin and I know our roles. She knows she's a woman. I know I'm a man. And just that there is very powerful because we understand our roles and how to fulfill them and support one another. I came into the relationship, kind of strong, not realizing that the other nature, knowing the other nature, which is a woman, is just as important as knowing your own nature. Um,
In Jungian terms, it's your anima. It gets you in touch with your anima, the latent femininity within yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I'm still pretty, uh, how do I say, very masculine, and I like to talk masculine, not in an arrogant way. Sometimes I can be arrogant, but before that, I would say 2 years ago, it was bad, man. I mean, if I any hint of feminism, I'm like, man, that's gay. But now I'm like, there is a beauty in serving my wife in a very gentle way. Um, I don't have to go in there all the time and solve her problems. The best thing for her, and she'll agree with this, is that for me to just listen to her, and that's serving her because my wife is so busy. She's doing so many things, and she has her head wrapped in so many responsibilities that for me to be here so that she can hear herself, hear her own thoughts by talking to me, that is serving her. That is definitely serving her. Is that feminine? You can say whatever you want, but I think that's the most masculine thing you can do. Is just being there for your wife and serving your wife. Um, we have these little barriers where these stereotype barriers, which I like to make jokes of, but in reality, anyone can do them. No, and if you have a problem with it, there's something wrong with you. But you can do the
Uh-oh.
dishes, and you can do the dishes, and there's nothing wrong with that, man. Talking to men now, you can serve your wife in any way, and there's nothing wrong with it. Um, Today we talk so nasty about women, and it's such a shame because um, other women are starting to actually agree with that. Like, yeah, my gender just sucks. My gender, I can be naggy, I can be bitter, I can be annoying. Are all those things true? In some extents, yes, but also true in men too. Women aren't just the only annoying, naggy ones, it's also men. And so, again, that's why I say there is no toxic femininity. There is no toxic masculinity. There is toxic humanity. And we're all trying to fight each other, looking for balance, looking for truth, when we have to understand one another's nature. Or, yeah, Carl Jung's anemic, is that what you said? Yeah,
Anima. And
anima. Yeah,
you know what
anima.
you're making me think about? So if someone were to ask, okay, Luke and Jerry, does unificationism believe in traditional masculinity or traditional femininity? I would say no, because traditional masculinity does not acknowledge latent femininity, and traditional femininity does not recognize latent masculinity. Now, the key word is latent because that's not who you are, because that's very towing the line to, oh, maybe I'm transgender. That's not unificationist at all. But is it sinful for a man to do the dishes to serve his wife? Is it unmasculine to listen to your wife when she's talking to you instead of giving advice, which, spoiler alert, even though we're both relatively newly married, we've both learned pretty early on that not all the time, but usually women prefer to be listened to rather than be given advice by you. That's a lesson that I have learned and am still learning.
I'm right there
Um,
with you, brother. Yep.
Still learning, still learning, because my instinct is always, oh, but just do this. But it's like, no. But that's
Right. Yep.
that's a masculine trait that actually women would prefer you tap into a little bit of that latent femininity on the foundation, of course, of your masculinity. Because it's very tricky. Unificationism is very, to use a term from Jordan Peterson, it walks on the border of things. It walks on the border of that yin and yang symbol, the Tao symbol. It's on the border. It's headwing. That's the unificationist term for it. It's headwing view. So is it traditional view? No. But is it feminist view or modern ideology of on the left side of the aisle of what men are? No. It's towing the border of things. It's an integration of your shadow, it's an integration of your latent femininity. I mean, I've been experiencing dreams and use it with the help of AI, but also with my knowledge of Carl Jung, interpreting it based on his understanding of how dreams work and the symbolism behind them. And I feel myself, ever since I entered into marriage with my wife, an integration and exploration of my anima. My anima has actually come out in my dreams. It's really weird and it takes a really strange form because it always takes the form of some type of woman who I've never seen before looking for, not tempting, but inquiring me to fulfill certain desires that I once treated as not allowed. It's not the right time. This isn't the right time to have these desires fulfilled. But now that I'm married, it's like, oh, the anima's desires can now be fulfilled in a healthy way.
Yeah, 100%. And I like that you mentioned, anima, because that is something that a lot of people will say, oh, even if you have a speck of anima, even if you have a speck of femininity, you're considered this, I think is the dumbest phrase in humanity is beta.
Beta.
I think
But
that's
you
what Lee
just
Peterson.
quickly, I just want to say the reason why the anima is often seen in the negative connotation is because it often manifests negatively. If you are lacking in some sort of relationship, especially a mother figure, it comes out hard as a negative force in you. But the problem is, people think it's just negative. You have to integrate. It's like they maybe come across Jung's work or some other psychologist and they hear the anima and they hear how nasty it is in the psyche, and that's all they read. They don't read the fact that you have to integrate it. Otherwise, it will
Right,
stay nasty. You don't just
exactly.
purge it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And what is that? What is that barometer? What? How do we integrate it without falling into um to being too feminine? Because there is
Mm.
a balance that we have to uphold, and that balance has been definitely shifted way towards the other side of the pendulum.
It has
Um,
eroded, honestly.
Absolutely, yes. And unificationism, that barometer is uh, having dominion, which is again the third blessing in unificationism. And having dominion doesn't mean to dominate others. It means to have dominion over creation. And having dominion over creation means loving creation at the most purest heart and you're capable of. Um, that means when you and your wife are together, you're not just together for each other. You're not just together for God either. You're together for others. You're there so you can serve others. You're there so you can serve God's children. There is a deeper meaning to why God wants married couples, and that's not to please God. Is God pleased? Yes. But more deeply than that, God wants his children pleased. So when you're married and you're setting a good example, there's nothing that makes God happier than that. You are showing the fulfillment of what God is in a uh, physical form.
Yes.
So that's a barometer that I think we should always carry. And that's why it's so important to know your roles during the marriage. And I'm going to say even before the marriage, know your role before you take on a marriage because your wife is not your mama. And women, your man is not your daddy. Okay. So understand that there's a role to be fulfilled, but understand that there is sensitivity in our hearts and our minds. And that has to be explored. And when it's explored, it can be beautiful. It can also be very hard. Um, So, Ujin and I still have a long way to go. I'm sure you and your wife, you guys are still growing. And I'm sure those who are watching who are 30 years into their marriage that can say they still have a long way to go. Um, yeah, it's a beautiful thing when done right, done correctly, and done with under the sanction of commitment, you know. And so,
Hmm. You know, I
yeah.
wonder, I think that adds an even deeper layer to why it's better to not date until you're ready for marriage. Because,
Mm.
like, seriously, when you said that this exploration can be done in a beautiful way, it also can be done in a terrible way.
Oh,
There's
100%.
people, it's in Carl Jung's vast collection of essays. There are people who have had negative experiences in relationships that scar them for a long time. There's trauma, requires years and years of therapy. Why? Because that exploratory process, when your latent, as a man, your latent femininity comes into intimate contact with the larger femininity, if it's not done correctly and in the right environment and with commitment, which is safety and which is security, which allows vulnerability, if you don't do that in that environment, you can scar yourself and the anima can become a negative figure for years. That's also why it's very important to have a healthy family, because you, as a mother or a father, do not want to scar someone's, your child's anima, or in women, the animus. You don't want to do that. So it's very
Yeah.
important. And that's why Mother Moon in particular hasn't been emphasizing the sexual component of the fall of man as expressed in unificationism, but more the relationship of Hut and what happened in Hut with the fall of man story. Because that's the real long term damage. It's not just that it's passed down, is that it's damage that is passed down.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Actually, there was a study that was done. Um, those who came from broken families, if you look down their ancestry, or those who have done wrongdoing, even their ancestry, you can see that they've come from broken families. Father wasn't there, mother wasn't there, maybe they were an orphan. Um, and those who are successful, and whatever success means in your definition, I'm just going to say those who have a happy life, joyful life, their ancestry comes from fulfilled families. And so there's a cause and effect there for sure. And it's something that has to be studied and something that has to be taken seriously. Uh, the whole, again, you said that relationships can be done correctly, but relationships can also be done very incorrectly to the point where it just self-destructs in your face. Um, and that's because, again, they didn't, those who were in the relationship, maybe they weren't ready at the time. I'm not going to say I know the reason, but I can pretty much narrow it down to they didn't understand uh, what it takes to have a relationship. And Christianity, Judaism, all these different faiths will have different, different verses, different scriptures. It's all the same right at the center. And that's commitment under sanctioned by God and sanctioned by love, God's love. And when two when two people go through that, um, they're joyful. Now, does joyful mean they're happy? No, absolutely not. You can live a joyful life and still have arguments. You can live a joyful life and still make mistakes. The point in joy is that you are aware of your surroundings. You're aware of what's happening spiritually, with emotionally, and you say to yourself, "I'm in a joyous occasion with God. I'm in a joyous occasion with my wife." Um, well, Ujin and I already had a few arguments, but we didn't let that divorce us. We didn't let that break us because we understood that we're in a joyful occasion and these arguments can be done correctly. What does that mean? We're not arguing to one up the other. We're arguing to get on the same page. And that same page is joy. We need to get back on the joy of God. Um, that can be very difficult to do. And yeah, I can't really say, for certain what causes this and there because I don't know all the relationships in the world, but I think that's a pretty good barometer to go on is joy. Understand joy and happiness are not the same. You need to aim for joy. You need to aim for God. Almost, I'm going to say in my opinion, desperately. We're human beings with emotions, and emotions are going up and down every single day. And when you let those emotions take over, your heart can be corrupted so easily. Um, yeah. I just want to say one thing to the ladies because I feel like we haven't said so much for the ladies. Um, if you're struggling with your guy, with your man, understand that that guy has so much in his head, and he if he doesn't share it with you, if he doesn't express his feelings to you, it's because today in the society it's shown as weakness or it's shown as this and that, and he has an expectation that he feels needs to be fulfilled. So although you want to understand him, you're not going to understand him fully, 100%. And so, and I can't speak for women because I'm not a woman. I wish my wife was here so she could speak. That would be an amazing interview. How about we set that up?
Hmm.
You know, but yeah, relationships can be done correctly. They could also be done incorrectly. And that's just my take on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the best way to, and maybe we can close with this, the best way to explore this part of ourselves, to go on this journey, is to ground ourselves in, as men, our own masculinity. In other words, the first blessing in unificationism, to be fruitful. That's why it comes first. It grounds us as who we are. In other words, we have mature character that can handle, this is what I mean by grounding, mature character that can handle the journey ahead. If you can't, you don't go on a journey without the necessary preparation. You hunt, Jerry. You don't go on the hunting trip without the proper preparation. Perhaps you need a coat, you need munitions, you need, maybe some snacks or some food, or I don't know. I've never hunted before. I'll have to go with you soon. But you need that
That
preparation
dude.
in order to go on the journey. If you are not prepared, you could come back injured, even die. It's the same thing with relationships. To walk on the border of things, which is very abstract in saying it, but I'm really thinking about that Tau symbol and how that really is a symbol that represents the joining of a man and a woman in marriage, and how dangerous that is, but how beautiful it can be if grounded on commitment and true love centered on God. But to do that, we have to ground ourselves. And so, what is some advice that you'd like to give to, as a man, any man, about how he can prepare himself for taking on this journey of which is marriage and family?
You need to be prepared, but understand the world doesn't center around you. It's not about you. Now, when I say that, you can take that very painfully, but I want to encourage you to take that deeply. Okay. I don't mean to say it's not about you in a negative connotation. I mean to say it's not about you in a way where you can explore different ways of serving. Um, Everyone today has a position they want to take, and they take it so personally because we have this self-help culture. This It's all about me. I need to help myself. I need to help myself. When you find a community, and it can be any community, um, where you're serving others, start with that first and start small. And when you're ready, take that same mindset with to your future spouse. If you're in the faith, take that future mindset with the matching. It's important to be prepared, but also you need to just make a decision and choose to serve. You can't wait for mommy to help you. You can't wait for daddy to help you. You're a man. You need to make a decision. You need to make a choice. This is the most important choice you're going to make, and it's not going to be the last choice you're going to make. After having that family, after finding your wife, there's going to be other hard choices you have to make. But understand you're in the role of a man, and you need to take responsibility in that role. And that sometimes means doing heavy lifting, and sometimes it's not nice or it's not comfortable to do that, but that's who we are. And you have the capability to do it. And so, you know, find the community that serves you best, that grows your masculinity, take that growth and serve the world.
Beautiful, beautiful advice. I would like to add too, this community that you choose to serve. make sure you have in it. And if you don't have it in that community, at least attempt to find one that has this, has a group of brothers, other men, who are striving for their gold star as well. It doesn't have to be the same gold star as you, but find other men who are striving for the gold star centered on the same standard. That will allow your service to turn into growth through substantial action. It will allow you to do the thing you hate the most, go through your own hell so that you can resurrect on the third day yourself as a man. Whether it's studying more, reading more, going to the gym more, whether it's praying more, or maybe you need to fast, or maybe you need to go on a service trip, whatever it may be, as long as it's your gold star around others that also are striving for their gold star.
Yes, 100%.
Awesome. Well, Jerry, I just want to thank you because I don't know about people listening, but I actually really got a lot out of this conversation. It made me think about not just unificationism and the more theological and philosophical sides of things on a much deeper level, which it has, but it's also made me even more sure that being an embodiment of the things we are striving for and carefully preparing for this journey is worth it. And I think it's a
Uh,
journey everyone should prepare for and be ready to go on because it is a beautiful journey.
Luke, you and I have known each other for 2 years now,
Is that
and
it? Are you sure? Maybe. I don't know. We'll talk about it after.
we've closely known each other for 2 years.
Okay,
Maybe
fair
I've seen
enough.
your face on a few things, but we've seen each other's growth. We know each other's growth. We know each other's stories, and there's strength in that, and there's power in that. When I'm looking down, I know that Luke was able to overcome this. I can do the same. Or, if I'm feeling this way, this guy that I look up to, this guy that I'm brothers with, I can rely on him to pick me up if I need it, when I need it. And that is a friendship, that is a bond that is worth dying for. Um, it can bring you so far in your growth. It can bring you so close to God. It's yeah, unimaginable. You know, yeah,
And it provides accountability too. If you and real accountability because I've experienced lackluster accountability, honestly. Lackluster accountability doesn't do anything. Real accountability is that brotherhood that you talked about. And it's that community of men growing to do the same thing. I would encourage any man who's lacking in that community to do what my friend Samuel did, which is to start your own community, your own brotherhood. Because what he did for me really changed me forever. And the friendship I have with those brothers, with you, and with others, that's what changed me forever. That's what allowed me to start this beautiful journey of walking on the border of things and exploring the anima and all these, abstract concepts that really aren't that abstract if embodied, because they're embodied either in a good way or a bad way. And it's kind of up to us to choose which way it is embodied, these ideas.
yeah, yeah. Life is a slippery slope. It's full of different ideas, full of different truths. But when we're able to hold each other's, hands in that slippery slope, I think we can be more safely secured in each other, for sure. Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you once again for coming on. I would encourage anyone watching to check out any of Jerry's videos at Lessons from the Oceans. He just shares what's on his heart, whether it's a message or just a practical tip in life. So definitely check it out. And also feel free to share this video with anyone who you might think it might help and subscribe to my channel as well. We want to do more videos about everything related to unificationism and life and theology and philosophy, but most importantly, embodiment. So I thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a pleasant day. See you later.